This is the Turtle Dojo, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast with your hosts, Adam and Chris.
Welcome to another episode of the Turtle Dojo, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast and recast. And I can't talk tonight, apparently. I'm your host, Adam, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Doing great, Adam. Happy to be joining you once again for kind of an impromptu, special episode. So this is fun. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and it's always good to be talking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, especially when there is expansion of the universe once again in, I was going to say live action. It's not live action. In animation, but on the big screen, which we haven't seen that in quite some time. As our viewing audience and listening audience may be aware, there is a animated movie heading our way in August. It's being produced by Seth Rogen and his Point Grey Pictures.
Permanent teenager Seth Rogen.
According to the and that is quite an apt description of him. There is so I believe it's August 3rd, if I'm correct in that that we're supposed to get this movie on screen. Do I have that date right?
Let's see. I'm not sure.
I could have sworn it was
August 4th.
Okay, close enough. August 3rd, if you're going to the Thursday, probably evening screening, right. And August 4th for everybody else that goes on a Friday. And so, this thing, we've known about it. We've seen the title card. It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is the title. We've seen the title card for quite some time. And you and I and probably a lot of other people were like, okay, two things. When are we going to get our first look at a trailer? And who's the voice cast for this movie? Because up until Monday that just passed, as of this recording, we didn't have any of that. And then all of a sudden, we had the full voice cast, we had a teaser poster, and we now have our first. Would you call it? I would call it a teaser trailer.
Yeah, I think so. It's less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, so that's a teaser trailer. Whereas anything 2 minutes or over is just a trailer. So, Chris, why don't you run down the cast and we'll discuss what we think about that first.
Okay. Starting off, we have a lot of newcomers as the Turtles because they have cast younger actors. Mm-hmm. in these roles. So these might be people that my kids are familiar with, but I'm not. But we have Nicholas Cantu as Leonardo, Shamon Brown Jr. as Michelangelo, Micah Abbey as Donatello, and Brady Noon as Raphael.
All right. Now, before we go further,
sure.
The only one of those four that I know is it Brady Noon, right?
Brady Noon?
Yeah. He's the only one I know. The reason why I know him at all is because he was on the Disney Plus series Mighty Ducks Game Changers.
Oh, cool.
So that's the only reason I knew he was on there, and he was the same guy. I found that out Monday night. But so that's what I know him from. And what I can say about him is that, he played the sort of the hero of that show, really, if you think about it.
Okay.
But he did have there was moments where he was angry with his mother or angry with his coach, so he was able to go into that angry sort of chip on your shoulder that you'd expect from Raphael to have. So he's capable of doing that. So that's what I can offer in terms of that.
Cool.
But I like just on the four kids. I like the fact that they're actual teenagers that have been cast here. It's the first time in the franchise.
Yeah, it's we'll get more into their voices and stuff later, but I think they're definitely going a different route with this than what we've seen in the past.
Right.
Then we get to probably the most so far celebrated casting, I would think, and that's Jackie Chan as Splinter.
Oh, isn't that just perfect? Like when I read it, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, man, that's great. That was the first one that popped out at me when I saw the cast list. I was like, oh man, that's super cool.
Yeah.
I love Jackie Chan.
He's great.
Then we get to I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly. Ayo Edebiri as April O'Neil. I'm sure I butchered that.
Wow, it's very well done, and probably better than I could have
learn
done.
it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Ice Cube is Superfly. This movie has all sorts of crazy characters in it. The aforementioned Seth Rogen as Bebop.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. John Cena is Rocksteady. That's a good bit of casting, I think.
It is, and I will say this: finally, you're going to see he's going to be in a role where his wrestling catchphrase of "You can't see me" actually applies because it'll just be his voice.
That's true. This is my personal favorite bit of casting. Paul Rudd as Mondo Gecko.
Mm-hmm. Where and I mean that character actually is one of the punk frogs that's in the that we've seen in Armageddon game. Remember? That's one of the So that's kind of cool.
I think I had the Mondo Gecko action figure.
I had a lot of them, but so I probably had that one too.
Natasha Dimitriou is Wingnut. She's great. I'm familiar with her from What We Do in the Shadows.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She's fantastic, and her voice on that show, she's putting on a voice for the character. So and it's fantastic. I can only imagine what she's going to do in this role. I'm really looking forward to that.
Right. Yeah.
We have Rose Byrne as Leatherhead.
That's an interesting bit of casting.
Yeah. Post Malone as, is it Ray Fillet or Ray Fillet?
I would say Fillet. But
I think so.
And the interesting thing about that is he's probably going to have, there's probably going to be like a soundtrack type of album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with him and Ice Cube, how can you not, right?
Sure.
So he's probably going to have a song on the album. I mean, he did for Into the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
And I don't even know if he was in that one, but so he probably have one for this one.
Yeah, if they're going to go that route, especially, they're going to try to put out something, commercialized that people can consume.
Yeah.
Then we got Hannibal Buress as Genghis Frog. I pretty much like Hannibal in anything that he does. I've loved him in, the very small parts he's had in the Spider-Man movies. He's funny. Yeah. He's just really good. So I think that's something that I'm looking forward to.
Cool casting, yeah.
Maya Rudolph as Cynthia Utrom.
Right, and that's a character that's created for the film, I believe, but it's an Utrom, so I'm glad they're being represented, right?
Right.
Which could eventually lead to Krang.
Yes, of course we're familiar with the Utroms, but I think you're right. I don't recognize Cynthia, the name.
Right.
And last on this list here, we have Giancarlo Esposito as Baxter Stockman.
Again, let me just say how perfect that casting is. I mean, it just screams like it's great. Like if they did a live, eventually they will. When they eventually do another live action movie, if they would carry over his casting as Baxter, I'd be fine with it. I'd be like, all right, yeah, let's roll.
I mean, yeah, he's always great, right? I mean, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, The Boys,
Mandalorian, I think it was, right?
Mandalorian, yeah. There's nothing that I've seen him in that I didn't think he made it better by being in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
He adds a lot of cachet to this cast list for sure.
Absolutely.
And I think we've covered the main points there. I don't think I left anybody out.
That's a lot of that's a big ensemble, and what it seems to me that they've done, and I'm not trying to make any comparisons. So I mean, it's just it feels similar in the sense that they've cast 4 relatively unknowns as the voices of the turtle, and then surrounded them with, some heavy hitting names in supporting roles. That's very reminiscent of the way Richard Donner cast Superman. And to an extent, Christopher Nolan cast Batman Begins. So that jumped out at me when I was going through the cast list.
Well, I think having Seth Rogen as kind of like the producer on this probably helps to bring in some of those names because he's just in recent times he's been connected to shows like The Boys and Invincible, and there's huge runaway hits. So him putting together a Ninja Turtles movie probably adds a level of clout to it that it might not have otherwise.
Right. Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah. So no, overall, I like the cast, and I'm just very intrigued that we're finally getting teenagers playing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, Seth Rogen did say that they were going to highlight the teenage aspect. So I mean, it makes sense. We could start by doing that by getting actual teenagers, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
the only real drawback to that I see is, what if this movie is a hit and you want to make another one in 3 to 4 years after this, but the kids have all aged and their voices have all changed? Does that create a problem?
Yeah, because then you're dealing with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, in one aspect, they're aging, and that makes sense, so their voices would change. Mm. But we've never in no interpretation outside of maybe The Last Ronin have we seen these guys age. They're always Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right.
So when they stop being teenagers, a part of the lure of the IP is gone, right? Because they're no longer teenagers. So that would be interesting. I mean, if this is a runaway hit, do they get the actors to, like, if this turns out to be a trilogy, let's say, right? Do they write it and get the actors to do the dialogue while they're still young enough to sound like teenagers? And then the animation, because it takes time anyway,
right?
Just throw that in, put that together later. You know what I mean? Get the vocal tracks down while you still have them at that sound, and then worry about the rest later. Is how I would approach it. But then again, I know nothing about any of this stuff. I don't know how it works. So what do I know?
That makes sense. Because it's a problem that Shazam 2 is running up against.
Yeah,
is that the kids have all aged, but they are on camera. It's not just a voice.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's not like they could have had them film their scenes 3 years ago and then built the movie around them. Whereas in this instance, if they do have a script or two ready to go, maybe they could kind of like fast track it that way.
Yeah. Because I'll tell you what, if there is a Shazam 3, I think probably Asher Angel is just going to play Shazam at that point. And they'll have to recast a different kid, but we'll cross that bridge on a different show and when we get there. But yeah, so I'm on board with the voice cast overall. How about you?
I am with I don't know that I call it an exception, but Donatello's voice strikes me as a little young.
Okay.
The other guys sound all like teenagers, whereas Donatello's voice kind of sounds to me more like an 8 to 10-year-old kind of.
10 to 12, maybe, yeah.
But other than that, they all sound like they're performing well in the roles.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So let's dig into the trailer. Give us a little bit of a rundown of what we see.
Oh yeah, so this trailer premiered Monday, and we get a look at the Turtles kind of. Well, this is a 2023 group of Ninja Turtles, so of course they have a phone and they're recording themselves doing various dangerous things on a rooftop, throwing different weapons at different fruits and perhaps other turtles. Because we see Donatello gets impaled with a sai right in his leg.
Right, but I think that's a different part of the film. Whereas the part you're talking about, I like it on two fronts, because what I think happened. This is just me extrapolating from the the minute and some odd change that we had. I assume that they're going out to train, which is what probably Leonardo wants them to do, right? And then, as usually is the case, Raphael and Michelangelo just want to screw around and have fun. Because you could see while Raphael's, sort of goofing off with Michelangelo with the ninja stars, right? There's a shot where Leonardo's like in the corner, like kind of annoyed and with his arms crossed. So he's like, okay, "Can we get on with it?" Right? So you get that vibe, which is something we're used to. Like that's typically the scenario that plays itself out across all incarnations. Leonardo's the serious one. Donatello's just like, yeah, I'm cool. I'll be the smart guy, and I'll go along with whatever Leonardo says. And then Raphael and Michelangelo are just the wild cards that want to do their own shenanigans. So that's a little piece of thing that I noticed. The other thing I noticed about the rooftop stuff is it makes sense that they're still. It seems to me that they're still new to all this relatively, and they're just having fun with their what they've been taught, and they're just, you know what I mean? They're not refined, honed the ninja skills the way we're used to. That's what I noticed from that scene. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, like you said, it looks like Mikey and Raph are kind of goofing around. Michelangelo holds a watermelon with a face painted on it, like on top of his head, while Raph breaks out the throwing stars. I like the design of all the characters, because this is really the first that we've gotten a chance to see what the character designs look like is in this trailer. I don't think we've had any like stills yet.
Well, I showed you the promo. Remember the promo?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
But I like Donatello's design. He's got the tech thing going on. He's wearing glasses. And he's got big headphones around his neck. Raph kind of has like the bandana.
It's the full one.
The full one that goes over his head, right?
It's like the Michael Bay one.
Yep. Yeah. It's great seeing these characters in action. I dig the animation of this.
That's one of the things that just before we had seen anything that I was concerned about, because I love Into the Spider-Verse, but it took me about 10 to 20 minutes into the movie to get used to that animation style, right? So I was kind of, now when I rewatch it, I love it, but so that was what to me was like, okay, am I gonna enjoy this with an IP that I care so much about, that I've grown accustomed to seeing a certain way, and now you're gonna switch it up in a vastly different direction. But each character looks good. I like that they went with the more modern sort of Bay-esque look for Raphael and Donatello, although Donatello is less busy than the Bay version.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
But Leonardo and Michelangelo are very classic looking. Like they look pretty much standard, vintage iterations, right? And so I like that melding of the past and present there. Speaking of past and present, I don't know if you noticed this, but the beginning of the trailer, when we're getting the shots of New York City, which by the way look beautiful, that animation style, I will say. When we were getting those shots, did you hear the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon theme on piano, or what I assume is a piano?
No, it didn't stand out to me. I didn't pick that up.
Were little pieces. It was a little notes from the original theme. So if you go back and watch it, you might be able to pick up on it, which I thought was a nice touch, which was cool. And I like how we did get some very traditional turtle stuff, in the sense that you see them sliding, all four of them sliding down. I guess I guess they were hydro wires, right? That was kind of, which is very reminiscent of, things that we see them, motions that we see them do, leaping out of the sewers is something classic that we've seen them do, and the sort of the suit up kind of moment where they're getting their weapons and all that stuff. That's kind of, that was sort of, they were hitting the goal, the signposts of things you want to see from a TMNT production, right? And they got those all very well. What did you make of Splinter? Because he had an interesting look, but I kind of like it. I dig it.
Does he have an afro?
Yeah, it looks like he does. Yeah.
Yeah, man. We only get a really quick glimpse of him as he's like spinning a staff or something like that.
A bow, yeah.
Yeah. But it does look like he's a rat with a big afro, which is new to Splinter. He doesn't look like the like an old decrepit Splinter, right? Like he looks like he's ready for action.
Yeah, right, exactly. Which is going to be an interesting dynamic. But when you have Jackie Chan, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? We get a look at what's funny is there's very little fighting / ninja action in this teaser. But you do get a little bit of a look at the villains, which we do see Bebop and Rocksteady, and they look amazing as well. They look real classic. Like it's like Seth Rogen said, okay, with these guys, we're going to stick to as close to the original animated incarnation as possible. I mean, didn't Bebop have a boombox? I think it was.
Oh, geez, did he? It's so fast. It happens so quickly.
I'm pretty sure, because I saw, and the only reason I know is because somebody posted stills, and it looks like he has the boombox, right? So it's like, that's pretty cool. And that's the moment where the Turtles were fighting with like four, I guess they were thieves or robbers or whatever the hell you want, in some kind of warehouse.
Random thugs.
Right, yeah. And when they run in towards the thugs, they're like, one of them's like, what's that? And he's like, they look like mini Shreks to me, which is I think it's kind of a meta. Yeah, it's a meta commentary on the one of the criticisms that the Michael Bay era of the Turtles had, because I remember back when that was coming out, they're like, oh, they just look like Shrek, right? And so maybe that was Seth Rogen and his crew and his team, poking a little fun at that.
Leaning into it a little bit.
Right, yeah. And so then that's the scene that you're talking about where Donnie gets impaled in the leg with his eye.
Yeah.
But again, to me that underscores the fact that these versions of the Turtles aren't as experienced in the way of the martial arts that the previous versions or that we're used to were.
Yeah, they're probably not as proficient with their weaponry as what we've seen in the past.
Right. Yeah. So when they freak out, when they're freaking out the way they were, it makes sense that if that happened to actual teenagers, that would be some facsimile of the reaction you'd expect from teenagers that are out of their element to have, right? And then, so they basically cut the credits, and you see the cast list, and then we get a sort of post-credit trailer scene where the Turtles are being interviewed by April O'Neil.
Yep.
And she's asking them about their origin, and she's like, "So what? You guys were hit with some strange? What did you say? Goo? I think it was.
I think she said goo, and they say no, it's ooze.
Yeah, it just sounds better. And then they're riffing on the ooze and how good it sounds. Which again, that's very, very, very much. I mean, it's different. Like we never had a scene like that, but it's very in keeping with that. Called back to me. It kind of reminded me of the Secret of Use when they were, and the way they reacted to it there. So it's different but familiar at the same time. And that little scene gives us a hint that April O'Neil is sort of, they're leaning towards the reporter angle.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's a full-fledged reporter for Channel 6 at this point, or maybe like she's studying to be a reporter, or
Right.
she's an intern to be a reporter. But I like that they went back to the reporter for this. What about you?
Well, yeah, that's the classic April that I grew up with, is the Channel 6 News April, right?
Yeah.
So as a kid of the 80s who grew up and was first exposed to April on the 80s cartoon series, then that's what I'm looking forward to. But things have changed so much in the world of journalism since then. So she could be writing for a blog, or she could be writing for her school newspaper or website or whatever it is. We don't know exactly what capacity she is.
And what's cool is the building, the rooftop that they're seemingly holding this interview is called the Laird Building, which obviously is a reference to Peter Laird, the co-creator. Okay, now, as much as I hate to have to bring this up, because we shouldn't have to, the internet being the internet and being stupid, it's, as of this recording, 2 days since the trailer dropped, and I'm seeing nonsense on Twitter about people freaking out because April O'Neil is a person of color.
You know what my thought about it was?
And somebody, hold on a second, just to go further, it shows you how ridiculous this is. How can I phrase this politely? One goof, that's as nice as I could put it, PG as I could put it, went so far as to body shame April O'Neil, calling her obese.
What?
So, Chris, like, it's 2023, and my comment is, it doesn't matter what skin color April O'Neil has. It's not a core defining, part of her character makeup, in the sense that what makes her April O'Neil. Her attitude is what makes her April O'Neil. Her drive as a reporter or a scientist, whichever version we're talking about, that's what makes April O'Neil the character that we enjoy. Her camaraderie with the Turtles. So if all that is there, then I could care less the skin color of a cartoon. And this isn't the first time that we're seeing April O'Neil as a person of color. Of course, that was also done in Rise of the TMNT, right? So it's like, again, it's 2023. This should not be a big deal. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, so I saw the cast list before I saw the trailer. And people were online commenting on the posts that I first saw with the cast list and saying things like, why do you have to have a black woman voicing a white character? Everyone was assuming that April was white. And then I saw this trailer and I saw that she was a person of color, and I was like, oh, now you people don't have to worry about it anymore. Now it's not a person of color voicing a white person, it's another person of color. So your argument is null and void as it stands. But you're right. It's in this day and age, it's not what we should be concerned with or focus on or really even care about. As you mentioned, the core tenets of her character, I'm sure, will still be in place. So I think everybody can just chill out and not freak out over this quote change.
Right, exactly. And so I'm pretty happy with the trailer, with the teaser, in the sense that, I've liked pretty much all but 2 iterations of the Turtles. My least favorite are the live action short-lived TV series, The Next Mutation, and Rise of the TMNT. They just weren't my cup of tea. Again, if Rise of the TMNT is your entry point into the Turtles, great, cool. Notice I haven't run an episode. We haven't done an episode of me crapping on Rise of the TMNT for 40 minutes. Yeah, I would never do that. If that's your entry point, cool, great. It just wasn't for me. But it's nice that obviously with an animated feature, the animation has to, it either is going to grab you or it's not. And thankfully, it captivated, it intrigued me, and I like what I'm seeing. I definitely would like a more story centric trailer that kind of goes into the the plot. But in terms of a first look and sort of to get a taste of the visuals and the vocals, I think this can be considered a success. I'm going to be there opening weekend. What about you?
I mean, I'll for sure be there opening weekend if for no other reason than my son is going to drag me to the theater to see this. Like, for sure. I haven't shown this trailer to him yet, but he's going to love it, and he's going to want to go see it. The animation really is, it looks colorful and fun and kind of like kinetic. Like they portray the action very well, what little bit that we're able to see. I think this trailer probably, this is just to, like you said, this is an introduction to the art style and the voices. And I think as we get closer to August, we'll get something that probably shows us more of the secondary cast,
Right.
the secondary heroes that are going to be helping the Turtles, the villains like Baxter. So I'm sure we'll get something that expands on what this one did as we get closer. But for a first look, I think it looks good.
Prediction: I think we're gonna get the next trailer in June with the Transformers: Rise of the Beasts.
Okay, I could see
Because
that.
Paramount is distributing both. The one thing I want to underscore is that I think Paramount is in a position where they can have their cake and eat it too, because they can have this animated feature, and of course, everybody here wants to do well, so that the fan base of the TMNT grows. Right? It's a really cool thing that you can go watch something that you loved as a kid with your kids, and it's a newer iteration. Much like I can take my niece and show her this, because and probably my nephews, even though they're actual teenagers. I think they'll still get a kick out of this. But I think Paramount, much like their Transformers franchise, is in a unique position where you can have animated content, but you can also do live action content. So I hope that what this movie does is that it reinvigorates the brand, the IP, on a larger scale by being in the theaters, and then the success of that will allow them to continue and not only the animated interpretation, but to push forward with another live action interpretation. Because there was talk of a new live action film, but that seems to have gone nowhere. We haven't heard anything.
No.
And I think what happened was the animated one beat it to the punch, and so that one's taking precedence. But I hope that potential success of the animated one, this animated feature, will spur them to again that idea of let's have our cake and eat it too, and to do a live action one as well, because you can hit a slightly different tone, with a live action one if you chose. So
yeah, man, I saw some, after the trailer came out, I saw some comments, people being like, well, I guess we're never going to get something that rivals the 1990 movie. And I'm like, this movie isn't supposed to rival the 1990 movie.
That's not what we're doing here.
It's 30 years later. It's playing to a different audience. It's an entirely different medium, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate and love the 1990 film for what it is, because it's top notch.
Absolutely.
And also be interested in this as well. They're not mutually exclusive. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. You can love different versions of one property, as we know and as we do. But to me, again, Here's when I'll compare a live action version of the film to the 90s version. If they announce, tomorrow, next week, next year, that, hey, we're going to do a Last Ronin movie in the style of the 90s film, then you can compare because they're telling you, hey, it's basically a sequel.
Right.
Right? Like remember when they did Superman Returns? They're basically telling you, look, here is a sort of requel, whatever they called it back then, to the Christopher Reeve films. So if I'm watching that, I can kind of judge those two on the same length because they're supposed to be a continuation. I can't do that with this because 1990s TMNT and this are not the same. They're the same IP, yes, but it's a different ball of wax. So you can't. It's impossible. The closest thing would be the 2007 anime CGI film, if you wanted to, because they were kind of sort of playing fast and loose,
right?
Where they had, but even that, it's still it's a different medium. It's hard to judge when they're two different mediums, right? And look, if all we're going to do is hold anything TMNT up to that standard, we're going to get into the Superman problem, where nobody's ever happy because some people want Reeves, some people want Cavill, and there's no hey, can we find something that works for everybody, even if they're not option A or option B? Like option C can still be really, really good. So that's how I'm looking for it, from my perspective. And
if you don't like option C, you still have option A.
Yeah, nobody's burning your Blu-rays.
Right.
Like New Line isn't going to come to your door and say, sorry, Paramount told us we got to burn your copies of the original movie. It's not happening. So don't worry about it. If you like it, great. There's another piece of the TMNT puzzle that you enjoy. If you don't, watch the old cartoon. Watch the old movie. Nobody's stopping you. But I'm taking it, my stance going in is, it's more Turtles. It's a chance for the fan base to grow, right? Because that's how things last. If the fan base continues to grow, and then the success of the animated, believe me when I tell you this, if the animated film makes money, Paramount's going to want some live action money too. I guarantee it. So you want something akin to the 90s version? Go support this. That's my take. Any final thoughts?
No, I think we pretty well covered it. I think it looks like fun, man.
I agree, and I'll be there on August 4th. And we'll check it out. And of course, we'll probably be right back here sometime after that, and we'll review it. So, when it happens and when we see it, you'll have our thoughts on it in a review. But until then, if you want to talk TMNT with us, you can on social media. So, Chris, where do they track you down?
I am on Twitter at Chris N. Harrelson, or search for Commodore Schmidlap. That's my screen name. And then Adam will post about this in the Facebook group. I'll be around there too.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at Adam_LeafsFan. We also have the podcast network. It has its own Twitter page at MMNPDC. Chris mentioned the Facebook page. Click the link in the description. I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But until next time, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are forever. From their first training session with Splinter in the sewer to the last. So long, everybody, and cowabunga.